Lady Anya Weatherwax, aged 7, informed His Grace that her horse's name was Twinkle, and she loved him very much, and asked if His Grace had a good horse too. His Grace has 100 horses, Lord Unwin answered impatiently. Fire and blood, under the regions, war and peace, and cattle shows. It's amazing how a little spark is needed to light the fires of creativity and thought. This happened to me when I learned of a House Weatherwax existing in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. I am convinced that this is a reference to Terry Pratchett's Discworld books. George R. R. Martin was among many authors who paid tribute after the news of Sir Terry's death to early onset posterior cortical atrophy Alzheimer's, so Mr. Martin was aware of Sir Terry's work. There are also similar elements in their fantasy worlds. For example, Borrowing in the Witches sub-series of books is a comedic version of skin changing, although both franchises do delve into the horrifying consequences of misusing such power. But putting tangents aside, it would be easy to say that the Fire and Blood quote subtly references the Discworld books. But when Mr. Martin references other works of fiction in A Song of Ice and Fire, they tend to be more involved. The so-called Muppet Tullys are a prime example, wherein members of House Tully are named Grover, Elmo, Kermit, and Oscar. Other references include a character's first name, surname, or nickname. They will parallel the homage character's actions or personality, or a detail in the sigil of a house or the family words. But no details of the Weatherwax sigil or house words have been given. Anya is not a name of any known Discworld Weatherwax or associate, nor is it a name that appears in any of the Discworld books, let alone the Witches. There is a counter to this, as another of Aegon III's marriage candidates is Ysabel Staunton. Ysabel is a name in the Discworld books, as a character with it appears in the Light Fantastic, Mort, and Soul Music. However, dividing the name and surname between two characters is unnecessary. Ysabel Weatherwax would work well and makes a more solid passing reference. Since this is not the case, it makes me believe there is more to this. Moving on from the name, Anya did not display any characteristic of Esmeralda Granny Weatherwax, the most recognisable member of the Discworld Weatherwaxes. Neither has any Weatherwax, nor any associate, been known to love horses. The closest a Weatherwax has interacted with an equine is when Granny Weatherwax was shown subduing a unicorn in Lords and Ladies. So I can only assume Martin will introduce House Weatherwax more appropriately in a future book. Then that got me thinking of where House Weatherwax might come from. The Discworld Weatherwaxes originate from the Ramtop Mountains, the most massive mountain range on the disc. Assuming this is incorporated into House Weatherwax's backstory, and knowing they must live somewhere in the Seven Kingdoms, the Vale of Arryn is the best substitute for the Ramtops. Then expanding from there, House Weatherwax would be a First Men Vale house, like House Royce. George has stated First Men houses have straightforward names, referring to the world around them, House Mud, Blackwood, the Red Forts, or, in the case of Stark and Strong, family characteristics. There is already a House Waxley in the Vale, so it may be possible the two houses are linked. And getting back to Esmeralda, there are plot hints to what House Weatherwax might do in the saga. In 4 Witches books, Esmeralda stops scheming outside forces illegally and unjustly claiming control of countries. In the first of the Witches books, Weird Sisters, which has parody elements of Shakespeare's Hamlet, Macbeth and Richard III, she saves her home country of Lanka. The villain is Duke Felmet, a cousin of the previous King Verence. Felmet came to power after he murdered the king and took the throne. In fact, the Duke's foreign wife was the real mastermind. In the end, Esme restores the true king, though not as you might think. In Witches Abroad, this time parodying and deconstructing fairy tales, Esmeralda defeats a foreigner witch. This witch, secretly though not subtly, controls the city-state of Genoa, a mix of New Orleans and Disneyland. Esmeralda's actions allow the daughter of the previous murdered ruler to assume her place as the city's leader. Then, in the previously mentioned Lords and Ladies, parodying elements of A Midsummer Night's Dream, Esmeralda faces an invasion of Lanka by the elves of the Discworld. I like to call them the very unfair folk, just to give you an idea. And finally, in Carpe Jugulum, Granny Weatherwax stops a family of modern vampires, the de Magpie clan, from turning Lanka into a blood bank. They are modern vampires as in the Anne Rice kind, which Pratchett humorously deconstructs. You, dear watcher, may have already figured out who the usurping and scheming foreigner trying to gain control of the Vale is. Lord Protector of the Eyrie and the Vale of Arryn, Petyr Baelish. And before you comment, yes, Petyr Baelish is a native of the Vale, but his family originated in Braavos. Mr. George R. R. Martin never does a complete one-to-one transfer between sources and his own writings. With all that in mind, I can only think that an Esmeralda-like character will form an alliance to oust Baelish from his regency over Robert Sweet Robin Arryn. We've already seen the Lord's Declarant in A Feast for Crows. Most of the members so far named are First Men houses, including one Anya Weatherwax, hinting at the connection between the Weatherwoods and the Weatherwaxes. Given this, House Weatherwax might very well be one in this faction. Baelish has managed to sow deceit between the Declarants, but given Granny Weatherwax's character, her parallel in Westeros might not be so easily fooled. In fact, she would manage to fool Baelish. According to the released Elaine 1 chapter of The Winds of Winter, there will be a tournament to determine the first 8 members of the Brotherhood of Winged Knights. This would be the best opportunity to learn more about Vale houses and House Weatherwax if they are among them. Martin has also said that magic shall increase in the upcoming books, and Fire and Blood introduced more magical characters, such as the witch Alice Rivers. So there could be the possibility of a witchy or even greenseer Weatherwax going up against Baelish. Hopefully this potential occurrence shall be more intriguing than what played out in the Game of Thrones TV series. Discworld fans have wondered what would have happened if Granny Weatherwax and Lord Vetinari of Ankh-Morpork were to have met. We might see a similar clash of wits in The Winds of Winter. To conclude, I realise that this theory is minimal and unlikely in the grand scheme of things of George R. R. Martin's magnum opus, but I could not let this theory lie. If you can have Cunning Sept and Baldric in the same book, surely there should be more to the Weatherwax family than a minor anecdote. One of Sir Terry Pratchett's best characters deserves better. To quote Esmeralda Weatherwax herself, "I can't be having with that kind of thing."